it's a better pursuit when you actually know a little bit more and kind of have a better sense of where you want to go in life. I mean, I'm 43, I think now, and I still don't know what I want to do with my life. You know,
You're
it's like
44. You're 44.
something like that. Yeah, 44 probably. Whatever. You know, coming up close on half a century. But you know, I still don't know what I want to do with my life.
You've got to show that you took your core knowledge and went and applied it in the actual environment and learned from experience and stuff that you know you just don't get in a classroom.
The idea that you have to have a course, like as in a direction in your life, like, you know, you are going to be this or you're going to be that, or, you know, at some especially early age, you have to figure out what direction you want to go and you have to stick with it and go it. That doesn't make any sense.
Of all the things you can do, how do you pick something if you've never tried any of them?
You know, we focus so much on building good workers. We're little worker bees that can go and get a job and, you know, build a career, and you're going to go to college. We're going to talk about college in a second because I have some thoughts on that. But there's absolutely no focus on actual independence, like running a business, starting a business. How do you do it? They don't teach you that even in college.
I dare say it might even do such things as reduce teen pregnancies and contracting STDs and things like that that come from not thinking critically.
Well, and maybe even like some of the school shootings and violence and some of the bullying and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Of all of the teachers you're going to encounter in this world, the most powerful teacher is failure. Okay, welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt.
And I'm Casey Rochford, and we would love you if you like, share, and subscribe, and hang around to the end because we make awesome music, and you can get it at patreon.com/KSMVidcast. So, what do you want to talk about today?
Oh, well, you know, at the time that we're recording right now, it's kind of back to school time, early September and stuff like that. And we also recently started a new side channel called Kitchen Sink University, where we teach people how to do stuff. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk about education, maybe the state of education, just things that we could, you know, the problems that exist and ways of improving things and all that. And yeah,
I definitely have a lot to say about that because you know, there's good and bad things about our education system in America, and you know, things vary from state to state, of course. So you know, we'll be speaking about Washington State experiences and the way that they've done things in the greater Seattle area, basically. So, like, one of the, I mean, I think you and I agree on this, but like one of the main things that just really needs to be like a requisite is like just basically how to live, you know, like all the things you need to know to get by, to live, like cooking and fixing a car and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because, you know, I think we kind of get caught up in the academia of things, and which are good things too, math and history and science and stuff. That's all fine and good, but I think we've kind of dropped over time a lot of these kind of life skills kind of things. And I think it makes me think, like, what is the purpose of education? Is it to get a grade or whatever, or, you know, learn some stuff out of books or whatever, or is it to learn how to survive? And I kind of go lean pretty far on the latter side of things, that it should be life skills and how to actually live and survive and be independent. And I don't think, I mean, I can speak from my time in school, and I'm sure it's probably not that much different today, that it really sucked at doing that.
Oh yeah. I think it used to be much better. You know, home economics used to cover a lot of stuff like sewing and cooking. I mean, I even remember like middle school, we would still do that stuff. And I really sucked at it back then, by the way.
Yeah, so did I. But it's
Um,
interesting. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was just gonna say, like, but right around the time I hit high school, I was about to sign up for auto mechanics because I was like, I want to know how to fix a car, and they were full the first semester, and then the second semester comes around and they got rid of the class, like my
Oh,
freshman year.
what the?
Yeah.
Oh
So,
man. Yeah.
so to this
See.
day, I really suck at working on cars. So that's your
Well,
part of the channel.
yeah, yeah. I'll be showing you how to do that, so don't worry. Um, yeah, it's really, man, that just like opened a whole bunch of different thoughts. I better start focusing here. But you know, you mentioned home economics, and it's funny that we think of home ec, and you know, in the name of the class is the word economics, but they don't teach you anything about economics. And you know,
Yeah.
I would expect that what they're talking about there is something like budgeting and, you know, household budgeting, how to manage money, you know, that kind of thing. But they never talked about that. When I was in school, it was all about sewing and cooking, which are good things to know how to do. But you know, I think budgeting a household is equally important, and that's completely gone now. You know, and speaking of things that are gone as well, all these classes like auto shop, and you know, when I was in middle school, the first year I was in middle school, there was metal shop in middle school. And I mean, we're talking sixth, seventh, eighth grade. I'm like 13 years old or something. I could have taken a metal shop class, but they shut that down the year before I got there. They still
Mm.
had wood shop, but then they shut that down. And now that area is like some kind of, I don't know, well, now the entire building is a completely different thing. It's some kind of teacher education center. But at the time, they shut it down and turned it into other classrooms. And I think that's kind of harmful, that, you know, learning how to work with your hands, how to fix things, how to make things. I think that's really important stuff. And there's really, I mean, I don't know. I'm obviously a little ways away from public education at this point, but I don't think it's really that different in that way. Like, I think they pretty much shut down all of the hands-on kind of classes that used to exist.
I've heard, I don't know if this is like all schools or, you know, just certain demographics, but I've heard that even the arts are getting cut,
What?
uh, art and music and
Oh,
stuff like
man.
that. And I mean, I think those are great things to have. Um, I understand if they want to allocate their budget toward the more popular things, and that is something that's like, I wouldn't call it necessary to require someone to take, but it should be available because, you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Not
Yeah.
everyone has artistic inclinations. They could care less. They'd rather be learning something else, and they should be able to. But
Yeah, but you at least should have a little exposure to it. That's kind of the whole point.
yeah, like I think the problem is not only that we focus on grades so much, which is ridiculous,
Yeah.
but that we focus on specialization pretty early on. Like we drive it home uh, early in high school that people need to figure out what they want to do in college, like what they want to focus on and stuff. And then you get this kind of like a rut that you build where you only, you're going down this path and you really only know things in that particular um, field of interest, let's say.
Mhm.
Like if you decide to go into science or whatever, you're going to know a lot about science and math, but you might have terrible grammar. You might not be very artistic. You probably don't know how to fix things. It's just too
Well,
pigeonholed.
yeah, and specialization is fine, but it's a better pursuit when you actually know a little bit more and kind of have a better sense of where you want to go in life. I mean, I'm 43, I think now, and I still don't know what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, you're
It's like
44.
uh,
You're 44.
something like that. Yeah, 44 probably. Whatever. Coming up close on half a century. But I still don't know what I want to do with my life,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it actually doesn't matter. But
Oh
to
yeah.
expect somebody who's in middle school age, early teens or something, to know what to do, where they want to go, and then basically uh, at that early age, they're kind of stuck on that course, whatever course they choose. And I mean, at that age, I want to be like an astronaut or a veterinarian or something like that. No, I don't want to do it. Well, okay, I'd like to be an astronaut today, but you know, it's impractical. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the specialization side of things is more of like a college side. By the time you get to that point, and even then, I think people can't possibly know what they want to do. Um, you kind of actually have to go into the workforce a little bit and do some stuff and experiment and kind of see what you like to do or what bears fruit for you.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, you pretty much can't get into grad school as easily unless, well, I'm speaking for science at least. You
mhm.
can't get into grad school without some real work experience, basically. You've got to show that you took your core knowledge and went and applied it in the actual environment and learned from experience and stuff that you just don't get in a classroom. Why aren't we doing that before people go into just the 4-year college or a 2-year college?
Yeah.
Like to some degree, I did that. Like I did go into community college right after high school, like a little bit before I ended high school, even the Running Start program. And then, like one credit away from getting my associates, I changed my mind about what I wanted to do, and I stopped and I spent time just like doing things.
Hmm.
And then I decided to go into science and start it all over again. And so I think that's a great thing because I feel like more of a Renaissance man, like you're
Yeah.
even more so. Like you've gone like engineering and IT and the arts, and you've got like this huge like wealth of experiences that you can use to analogically think about problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's something that might be, I think that's important for people to have those kinds of experiences. Um, it makes you a lot more capable, well-rounded, I guess. And it also gives you exposure to things that you might not otherwise have. And I think that helps you in kind of determining where you want to go in life. Not that we have to have a direction. That's kind of something I want to get into at some point. The
Mhm.
idea that, or we could probably get into it now, actually, the idea that you have to have a course, like as in a direction in your life, like, you are going to be this or you're going to be that, or, at some, especially early age, you have to figure out what direction you want to go and you have to stick with it and go it. That doesn't make any sense. Why not try a bunch of different things, try and fail and, learn and all that stuff. Um,
Yeah, it's kind of hard to know what you want to do if you've never tried it. And
yeah.
and it's like, how do you of all the things you can do, how do you pick something if you've never tried any of them,
Hmm.
or you've got very little exposure to them? It's like, I understand there's a fine balance between, making things too general or too specific, and I think they're aiming for that middle ground, but I think they're falling short in some of the key elements, and they're focusing too much on. Um, I mean, history is important, but I think it should be more back burner than some of these things that we talked about at the head of the show. Like budgeting and fixing things and stuff like that. That's really going to come in handy, for a variety of reasons. Like if everything from if you just want to save money on fixing something, all the way to society crumbles and you need to fend for yourself. Like
Yeah,
your,
exactly.
your,
Oh,
your
we'll cover
history
that.
won't do much good for you then.
Yeah, we'll cover that in Kitchen Sink University for sure. Um, yeah, it's oh wow, there's so many things that I want to talk about, and we might have to actually split this up into a couple different episodes, or maybe it'll just be a really long one.
Well,
Because every time you bring something up, I think about a whole bunch of different things. The oh man.
what do you think about the concept of charter schools?
I like it, because this is the problem I have with public education. It is a one size fits all solution. Basically, it's standardized, at least mostly standardized, and the assumption is, here's your curriculum. These are the things you're going to learn, and these are the ways we're going to teach, and this is the structure. And I think that's wrong, because there should be room for experimentation, because clearly we don't know how to teach in this country. I mean, we spend more money than any other country on education, and we're really not that exceptional in that regard. Um, we have this system and we keep tweaking it, and it keeps sucking, you know. So I think charter schools are cool because it kind of allows for some new ideas to be thrown out there, and some new things to be tried, which wouldn't otherwise happen in a standardized system. So it's a good thing, and I think it should be encouraged. But it seems like there's a little bit of resistance out there to that.
Yeah, I originally was kind of part of that resistance. I still don't know exactly how to feel about it, because there are some drawbacks to it. Like, so the concept of charter school is that it's a public school. Basically, it gets public funding, but they have uh, leeway in the curriculum to some extent,
Yeah.
and um, basically, like, they kind of get paid based on how many people are attending.
Hmm.
So number one, right there, your more populated schools are probably going to have better success. So maybe like rural areas are going to kind of fall short on that, or maybe just have to rely on the tried and true public school system. Um, so there's already kind of some disadvantages to a pretty big chunk of the population right there. Then you've got like all the mass amounts of variety. Like, each charter school would be like, if your kid really wants to focus on arts and the nearest charter school that does arts is like 50 miles away, that's a little inconvenient. And
Yeah.
like, you might still be missing out on opportunities just because of geographical uh, hindrances. And
Well, and that's changing. Again, there's too many. Uh, to the viewers, forgive me if I lose track of my thoughts, because there's so many different thoughts going here, and I'll have to come back to them. Um, yeah, that is definitely an issue that I have with charter schools. Um, but I think, given the fact that I mean, it's pretty clear that a standard system, the way that we have it, is not really performing that well for how much money we're sinking into it. I think it's good that there are other options, because these are future adults that we're talking about. Do we want to screw everybody just for the sake of maintaining the status quo, or should we try something new? And I think at this point, it's okay to do that. Like, we really should be doing it. And yeah, maybe it isn't perfect, but speaking about the geographical limitations, this actually kind of goes into something that I think I think about this a lot, that maybe because of our technological advancement, we might actually be able to just eliminate schools altogether. Like the building of school, like the school buildings, the structures, the traditional ways of doing things using technology. And I think about this because, when I was in school, I hated history, and I sucked at math, and really, I didn't learn that much. But after school, using all of the tools on the internet, I learned so much more, and I became fascinated with history, and I was able to learn way more than I could possibly have learned in a school
Oh
environment.
yeah. Yeah, all the history I wanted to learn was never part of the history curriculum.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. And I actually, since that, like, I could barely add two numbers together when I was in high school, and now I love math. It's beautiful. Like, it is so much fun, and I love exploring it, and I learn about it all the time. And I think, why not use that technology to teach people? Why can't we use all of this software? I mean, and there are like multiple online schools that you can attend. Even YouTube, just sitting on YouTube and watching educational videos, you can learn so much more than you could possibly learn in a public school. And so why not turn that system? Why not use that system? And because, I think about it, people learn in different ways, and they learn at different paces. And so how is it that if you have one teacher in a classroom, or a classroom structure where all the students go in, and there's one teacher and they teach one way, how can we expect them to learn when everybody learns differently? Why not use the software approach, which can adapt to different people's learning styles and allow them to learn at their own pace? And then at that point, you don't even need to have different, like the way that it's structured right now, where you attend school and you're a certain grade and you move up and why not just let it go? Let people learn the way they want to learn. I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, it would be really cool if somebody started a YouTube channel that was all dedicated to learning, like a kitchen sink university or something.
Yeah. We
But
keep plugging it.
no,
Yeah.
I think that's a cool idea. I think it would have to. I don't know that we could do it 100%
No.
so much as augmenting the system that we have. And here's two reasons why, if I can remember them. Number one, I mean, unless there was some kind of stipend to cover the costs of internet, like there might be some families that couldn't actually afford to make that happen for their child. And two, another thing that most people can't afford is the free daycare that school is. Your kids get to go off and be taken care of by the teachers basically for 6-8 hours a day or whatever. And
that's a good point. And I think that is something that would have to be addressed, but maybe there could be some kind of hybrid system that it could be a little bit more flexible in that regard, because there are families where there's somebody home all day that could watch somebody. And if you look at the cost of education in the US, if we weren't paying for a school building and all the resources and the, administrative costs and things like that, we could easily afford $30-$40 a month internet for everybody, and a laptop. And there's going to be classes that you have to be there in person. There's certain things that you can't possibly do online, and that's fine. But you could certainly cut out a lot of those costs. And even if you do have a school, maybe it's a little bit less like a traditional school and maybe more like a cubicle farm or something like that. People come to school and they learn at their own pace in their own way. And the teachers are basically supervisors that kind of just monitor what's going on and make sure everything's cool.
Yeah, they're more of a teaching assistant.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
yeah, you could still have a physical brick and mortar building, and I think you should, because you need to learn social skills.
That's true.
And like, just going to the Boys and Girls Club isn't going to cut it, because you're not going to keep up with that.
Well, and talking about that, the social aspect of it is definitely an important part of learning how to be an independent human being.
Yeah.
You learn that.
Yeah, and it's not just kid-to-kid relationships, but, kid to authority and stuff like that. So
yeah, the adult aspect is definitely a thing.
Yeah. But yeah, like, you could have like just kind of like an open classroom sort of feel, where you have classrooms dedicated to one subject or whatever, with programs that are algorithm based, that adapt to the student's learning style, and there's a teacher in the room to kind of help you and guide you and answer questions, but not necessarily lecture at you. Yeah. And when you're done learning that for the day, and you feel like doing some math, you just get up and wander out whenever time and go do that. And if you get hungry whenever, you just go have lunch when you're hungry. Like, take away all that rigid structure, which, I mean, people have to learn structure and punctuality and stuff for certain situations, but I don't think it needs to be like a boarding school rigidity.
Yeah, definitely. The public school systems in general tend to be very regimented, and I think they're
like prisons now.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, because again, it goes back to this whole point: what is the purpose of education? And I think that question has to be constantly asked, and that's how we're going to find the correct answer, is to ask that question.
Yeah, and you base everything on grades, and then you start changing the way the grades are done. You add in these A pluses, and people can get higher than a 4.0 now. It's really just screwing everything up. Like, you got no basis for comparison anymore.
No, it's true. And the bell curve and all that stuff. Like I mean,
and analyzing people pass kids just to get their metrics up and stuff, and it's
and really the point of grades is basically just to analyze progress, like how you're progressing. And that's where, if you use a software approach, you wouldn't necessarily have a grade. You'd just be progressing in your educational journey, and there wouldn't be necessarily a grade. The whole point is to learn stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
like, there, the software could just randomly pop up some kind of quiz, and if you do well on the quiz, you keep going. If you are lacking in a few things, then those tidbits of information that you obviously didn't get well enough exposure to, they just sprinkle it back into the rest of the curriculum on the program or something. That would be
that's a great point, actually, because grades oftentimes act as a hindrance to people who don't perform well.
Yeah,
it's really
punitive.
Yeah. And when you look at it, it's like, what? If you're getting bad grades, it's because you haven't learned stuff. So, okay, you can't just like recycle that. Oh, well, you haven't learned something, so we're going to drill it into your head again until you learn it. No, you have to change your tactics. And this is what a computer-based system could do. It could figure out over time how you learn based on how you react to the information presented, and adapt itself to provide that information in the way that you need it to be provided, so you learn.
Yeah.
And why aren't we doing that? You
Yeah.
know, we've been doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
And
And
and what is exactly more important? Is it getting good grades like a week after you learned all this stuff, or is it longevity? Like, because
exactly.
if you like, I'm interested in pedagogy. I like to study how we learn and whatnot. And there's been studies shown that if you study like in pockets and with like vast amounts of time in between each subject, you have to think really hard to recall all that stuff, and you might get worse grades. But when you go a distance of time out from there and take the same test, you will perform better than the people that got good grades that week after learning it.
Huh.
Because they're just working on rote memorization and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But you're flexing that muscle to remember it, and that's creating going back to an episode just a little while back, neural connections. Our brains are really plastic, so you're enforcing these connections and making stronger bridges to the knowledge.
Yeah, and probably maybe a more experiential based approach might be good, because I think a lot of people learn by doing, not by just simply watching a video or reading in a book or something or hearing a lecture. They learn stuff by doing and making mistakes and overcoming those. And that's another aspect that's missing in a lot of modern school systems. Now, I do want to point out something I think that they're doing right in the public school sector is the STEM system. Like,
Yeah.
People should look that up. It's kind of interesting. And I think that's actually a good thing, but it isn't going to overcome all the bad. But it is definitely a good direction to be going, because that's something that's been missing for a long time in our education system is science and technology and engineering and stuff like that. It's like,
Yeah.
science is
I mean,
there,
like,
but it isn't integrated together. Those things kind of all interconnect.
yeah, like science in primary school and secondary school is kind of like surface science, but you don't really learn the scientific method. You aren't taught the critical thinking skills that are required for thinking like a scientist, or
Yeah, and
thinking like anyone should be thinking, actually.
that was what I was going to say. Like, that's an important life skill, actually.
Yeah, which is probably a good segue into one thing that's really missing, and I don't think has ever really been a part of any public school regimen, is logic.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Why aren't they giving you logic classes, even as an elective? I would be fine with that.
Yeah, they really should be. Well, because there's very little focus on critical thinking. I think it's more like,
Yet when you get to college, they really drill that into you. Like, everything is about learning how to think critically. Why aren't they teaching that during your formative years?
that's a good point. They probably should be, because then they wouldn't have to go back and do it again later when you're already basically an adult.
Yeah, I dare say it might even do such things as reduce teen pregnancies and contracting STDs and things like that come from not thinking critically.
Well, and maybe even like some of the school shootings and violence and some of the bullying and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, learning logic actually is a very valuable thing.
Yeah, logic does kind of lead to compassion, because it oftentimes will allow you to get a little introspective and analyze the way that you think. And if you have some bigoted thoughts or something, it can kind of erode that quite quickly.
Yeah.
And so, like, why aren't we teaching this in schools early on, preventing bullying and violence and all these horrible things that just come from emotion? And I mean, emotion's good, but
Yeah.
like, ruling your life with emotion is chaotic.
That's true. And, yeah, that would be a really good one.
And those are emotional times in your life, being a teenager or preteen.
Hmm.
Like, oh my God.
Yeah, all
Being
the
launched.
hormones and stuff. And yeah, it's kind of a crazy time. But, thinking, going back to things they uh, should teach but aren't, what about business? We
Yeah.
focus so much on building good workers, little worker bees that can go and get a job and build a career, and you're going to go to college. We're going to talk about college in a second because I have some thoughts on that. But there's absolutely no focus on actual independence, like running a business, starting a business. How do you do it? They don't teach you that even in
Yeah.
college. I mean, well, within some, depending on what you're doing, they
Yeah. I
might.
mean, there's a specific focus for it,
Yeah,
but usually more for big business and not
yeah.
small business.
But you don't need a college degree to start like a food truck or something like that, or a lawn mowing business or something like that.
Yeah.
But you do definitely need to know how to run a business and how it works. You need to know a little bit about economics and marketing and all that stuff. Why not teach it? I'm going to give a little anecdotal experience that I had when I was in high school. I remember, I think it was my senior year in high school. They had the career center, which you might remember because you went to the same place. And I think it was like an entire week where it was, you go to the career center and you'd select whatever kind of job you wanted to do, and you'd get some books and read them, and you'd talk to the career counselor, and they kind of help you find out what you need to know and all that. Well, they went around the class and asked everybody what they wanted to do, and people gave their usual answers, like, I'm going to be a firefighter, or I'm going to be a cop, or whatever, that kind of thing. And me being a bit of a introvert, I was the last person, and they asked me, and I was like, well, I'm going to start a business. I really like video games and programming. I'm going to start a video game company. And the career counselor had nothing. He was actually kind of shocked by it, and is like, well, there's some books on computers over on that shelf. And of course, they were books from like the 70s. And I'm like, it has nothing to do with computers. I want to know about business. And of this huge room full of hundreds of books, there were 0 books on how to run a business. Yet every single career that was in there was a business of sorts. And I think that's kind of lacking, because that's a huge problem. Why do we not teach that in school? That should be your fallback, or maybe your primary source of income. If you get out of school and just want to do something, you should know how to start a business. And
Yeah.
we don't talk about it ever. And I think that's super harmful, because then it makes people dependent on employers when you could be an employer yourself.
Oh yeah. Well, just thinking, pretend life is a chessboard.
I always do.
Yeah. Thinking forward, there's a pretty strong growing movement toward this democratic socialism or social democracy, whichever you think it fits into best or whatever, where big business is going to be kind of poo-pooed and small businesses will flourish. Well, when there's all that demand for small business, you've got to be able to supply it. And you make a good point. Like, we really need to be teaching people how to build a successful business. Like, you and I did it in 2006, and it lasted almost 7 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could have kept going, but I went to school, and things happened and whatnot. But I think we did okay, and we didn't have any business degrees, but
No,
we
and
could have done much better, of course.
considering we didn't start with a lot of capital, and we didn't do all the usual stuff like a business plan and all that, we did actually do pretty well. And also, it was a very, very niche market, which put us at a lot of risk. But dedication, hard work, you can make it happen.
Yep.
But most businesses fail, and I think it's probably because of ignorance. Like, people don't know what they're getting themselves into, um, and I think that's something that we should teach kids. A business, you don't have to come out of high school and go work for somebody. You could start a business. um, and I could go on and on all day long about all the barriers put in by the state to make it impossible for people to start, but we'll just
Oh,
leave it at that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But still, I think that that's an important thing, and maybe it's something that people should be doing early on, so they kind of get a sense of you know what to do, and they have a few experiences and a few setbacks, and before you even start working for somebody, maybe you should run a business, the proverbial lemonade stand, I guess. um yeah, and that's totally lacking in school. It's all focused on jobs, and it I don't
Yeah,
think
it would
that's
be
doing.
interesting. Like if we go back to that idea that you kind of mentioned about uh, a school environment where it's all basically like self-taught with some guidance, and maybe it's like an open classroom sort of thing. Like, wouldn't it be kind of cool if it was structured in such a way so that uh, you could start a business in your school
Hmm.
and take what you've learned and like apply it to helping others or something, and that is such a learning process. When you and I started a business, we really didn't know what we were doing, and we learned as we went, and we learned quickly, and we learned a lot
Hmm.
because we just jumped into it and did it. If I don't know, like, it's just kind of a rough idea that just popped in my head, but it would be something interesting to iron out all the details for, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it does go back to that whole concept of what is education for. I think if you want to create the next generation of independent, capable people, um, they should not be dependent on a particular line of work. You should always have a fallback. And maybe that fallback is starting a business. It,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, that would be good. And that's not going to work everywhere, but I think it's something that we should certainly be putting a little bit more attention towards,
Yeah. And
because
I think one thing that would be important to drive home is that you don't need to specialize your business either. Like you mentioned, our business was a niche market. We really should have generalized early on what we could offer. Um, and we were fixing printers, and that's very that's very focused. And then we
yeah.
then we expanded to computers and offering copying and faxing services and selling printers and toner and things like that. But we also dabbled in the idea of having a photography service. Like, that's not even related to
No.
printer repair. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. Like, I
No,
think,
as long as you don't stretch yourself too thin. That's the
yeah,
thing. Like, and that's where specialization does actually make sense. That if
well,
you
yeah.
are
I mean,
really, really good at one thing,
yeah. I
then
mean, don't operate a bakery out of your auto shop or anything,
yeah,
but
exactly. But that's a good point. You shouldn't discount potential related ways of generating revenue.
mhm,
I mean, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to survive. That's what it's all about.
yeah. And
Um,
if you're good at more than one thing, there's no reason you shouldn't capitalize on all of it.
yep, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So I want to talk about college for a second, because I think it's it's something that is far too, how do I put it? It's pushed way too much as the only way to get ahead in life. Like, you get out of high school, you better be going to college, otherwise you're just a deadbeat. And I think it's kind of bullshit. Um, no,
Yeah.
if you're interested in being a doctor, or some kind of highly technical field or something, or a specialized field, yeah, it makes sense to go to college. But it's basically like, and I don't know where this comes from, but everybody is told that you have to go to college, otherwise your life is over. And I disagree. I think trade schools, there's a, you know, going to a trade school is probably a good course of action for a lot of people,
Oh
because,
yeah.
you
I
know,
wish I did that. It's way better money.
yeah, exactly. And the jobs are all there. You go, any kind of field that you go into in a trade school, you can come out and you can command six-figure incomes pretty early on, because they're in demand. Everybody has a 4-year college degree, but very few people have, a degree in welding or something like that, some specialized field like that. And I think it kind of sucks, because I feel like those kind of directions in life are looked down on. Like, oh, you want to be a plumber, or you want to be an electrician or something, but those are important things and they pay really well. And
When I was a kid, like a real little kid, my grandpa always told me that he thought I should become a garbage truck driver because they made real good money. And I was like, yeah, whatever, Grandpa. But
mm-hmm.
looking back, I was like, I could have done that for a few years. I would have really, you know, it would have helped to have a pretty good paycheck with no real education.
Yeah, well, you do have an education of sorts. It's just not
I do now, yeah. But
not a higher level education. Yeah, and I mean, I think Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs showed us how important and how valuable those sorts of careers are,
mhm.
and hopefully destigmatize them a little bit, because I think people do really think that if you don't get a 4-year degree, that you're nothing. But
Yeah, I don't know if it's pushed that hard. I think there's still um, you know, letting people know that trade school is an option. But there's also this phrase that the bachelor's degree is the new high school diploma. And, in a good chunk of the specialized job market, that's becoming very true. It's frustrating and irritating that you go $50,000 or more in debt in student loans and come out and you need a bachelor's degree plus 4 or 5 years of experience. Well, what?
yeah, that's good. It's a really good point. And I did actually want to talk.
$12 an hour.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I did actually want to talk about the whole student loan thing, because I think that's a huge, huge problem right now. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
man. Oh,
I mean,
geez.
I've been making payments now for 4 years and it hasn't moved.
Interest. Whoops.
It's not even that big interest. It's just that it's such a big amount that
Well, and that's the thing. I've heard it argued, and I might kind of lean in favor of this idea, that going to college, unless you have a very clear direction, an academic direction, that going to like a traditional 4-year college is just stupid. I mean, unless you have cash to pay for it. But if you're getting a loan, you're in debt, you come out, you have to pay that debt back. And, people say, well, in the course of somebody's life, once they have a degree, if they, bachelor's degree or whatever, that they make this much more money. Well, you have to pay back all the money you spent getting that degree. Plus you lost 4 years of your working life that you could have been making some money and getting ahead. I actually think it kind of breaks even, and it's kind of nullifies the validity of such a thing
yeah.
for
I
the
mean,
average person. let's
Yeah.
say.
Well, I'll speak to my experience. Like I never really had great jobs. I never really had a lot of money. I was always kind of on the low spectrum of income, skirting the poverty line basically. And I had to live off of food stamps and food banks to get through college. Um, and I took out loans to get a science degree. I got a degree in biology, and the student loans that you rack up for science uh, is a little bit higher because you have lab fees and stuff like that. And it's a lot more time involved because of those labs and because of the extensive amounts of homework that you have. So you're putting in a lot of time, paying a lot of money, and then you're going into a field that doesn't really pay great, even though a lot of what you're doing is developing these drugs that we charge a shit ton of money for. Where's that going?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not
Yeah,
going
that's a
in
good
my
point.
pocket. It's not going in the researcher pocket.
Yeah. I mean, maybe if you got to a high level, you might be making more money. But yeah, entry level after college, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some people do make money, but it's like I knew a guy that, you know, before we even graduated, he was a business major. He landed an $85,000 a year job.
Yeah. And this is the thing. Like, if you had gone to truck driving school, you'd be paying a fraction. In fact, you could probably work a minimum wage job and pay off cash the fees for truck driving school and come out making a pretty good living as
Mm.
a truck driver. Or, you go to a trade school and learn to be a plumber or a welder or an electrician or something like that. You do pretty well. And
I mean, like, this was coming out of the 90s where we actually had a really great economy, granted, but I remember in like 2003 or whatever, when you and I were roommates, there was a good chunk of time you weren't able to find a job, and I had a part-time job delivering pizza and, like cooking and stuff like that. And rent got paid and bills got paid.
yeah.
Oh, you would not be able to do that now.
No, maybe, but yeah, it's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah.
I, man,
I mean, there's a whole other episode to go into on things like the minimum wage and inflation and all this stuff, but
yeah, honestly, like
that's kind of a digression, I guess.
well, it's connected. And yeah, I'm having trouble focusing because there's so many different things I want to talk about, but I want to keep it kind of, laser focused on education.
Yeah. Well, let's bring it back around to plugging our channel, because a lot of what we're talking about, we're trying to do in some fashion with Kitchen Sink University. We're trying to take what we know, which, we don't know everything,
Nope.
and we don't even know it that well necessarily, but what we do know, we want to impart on other people that may not know. And I kind of personally think it would be cool if people came to us and submitted videos teaching about what they know how to do and say, hey, I'd like you to show this on Kitchen Sink University, because we don't know it all, and the more the merrier, really.
Yeah,
Wouldn't that
no,
be cool?
that's a good idea. And because yeah, what at least I can speak for myself, what I know is the product of many, many failures, trial and error, and I learned things as a result. But the important thing is to try to begin with. But yeah, that's a really good idea. Um,
Yeah, I
man,
mean, we've got kind of like these series, or like classes or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it. They're YouTube videos, but there's certain themes to them. I do a good chunk of like logic and cognition and critical thinking, because I have a strong science background, and a lot of that was drilled into my head, and like grammar and stuff, because I originally wanted to be an English teacher. So I've got that under my belt. And, you've got a host of like different DIY and survival things that, there's just a really cool array of stuff that you really don't get in, high school. Like you might find it in some colleges, but even there, like a lot of this just life experience that you really can't find in a brick and mortar school.
Yeah, and that does go back to the point about using technology to teach people things. I think technologies like YouTube are a very valuable resource, and I don't see why there couldn't be an entire school built around it. It'd be an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Because you really could learn anything you ever want to know. I mean, you just spend a couple hours on SciShow or something like that, Veritasium or something like that, and you learn all kinds of new things. Things you wouldn't learn in a school.
Yeah.
You know?
I get that it's a lot easier to quantify your education if you have a diploma and it comes from an esteemed school, and you have grades to point to and say, this is how well I performed on those tests about things I learned the day before, but honestly, in the scheme of things, and I think people know this because this is why they're asking for experience plus education. None of that means jack shit until you actually start doing things, Yeah,
that's true. Experience is definitely much more valuable than education.
I mean, I don't know about more, but they're both pieces of a puzzle that are necessary to get the goal achieved.
Yeah, I mean, you do need some education, but the experience definitely is like hyper education.
Yeah,
doing something gives you a lot more results in that regard. But yeah, man.
Like there was a joke in that show Red Dwarf where the cat said something like, I had to teach myself everything, and since I didn't know anything, lessons were long and slow. So it does help to get somebody who's been there to teach you a few things, but you definitely got to do it. And
yeah, exactly. And that's where I think we're coming from with Kitchen Sink University is being a mentor to people and teaching them stuff that comes from a long series of failures, at least in my side of things. Yours, you have schooling behind you. Me, it's just failure. But I hope to teach people stuff so that they don't fail. You can skip over all of the bad stuff and be able to do something.
Yeah. And, even if you do fail, in science, it's drilled into our heads that most of what you're going to run up against is failure, and that's not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sucks to lose all the money you invested in it, but in the end, you at least know what doesn't work, and by the process of elimination, you can start finding your way to what does work, or you find out that it just can't work, and then you steer somewhere else, which is definitely a possibility too.
Well, and the only way is to try and fail. It's the only way you're going to discover that.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, of all of the teachers you're going to encounter in this world, the most powerful teacher is failure. That's what I've learned. That's how you learn things. So take that for what it is.
Sounds like a soundbite.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah. And I'd like to hear, I mean, because we went over like a lot of things. I have so many more thoughts, but maybe we should keep this concise, because we're coming up on an hour. But I want to hear what other people have to say about education and how to teach people and what they think the solution should be. Like,
Yeah.
how can we improve things?
I mean, everybody learns differently, and it would be great if there was some kind of, inclusive system that could maybe not necessarily tailor everything to the student, but make everything available to the student so they can tailor their experience to whatever style they learn best from. Because it may be all of them, or
That's a good point.
maybe just one. And so, yeah, I really hope that's what we achieve with Kitchen Sink University. And I think I'm gonna put a link on our YouTube page under the Loyal Deep Sink Divers, so you can find it there. Please go and subscribe and check out what we've got.
Yeah, and we have a lot more content we're going to be adding there. Yeah. Quite a lot.
It may not be as regular as these episodes, but bear with us. It's hard to come up with a teaching curriculum when you're busy with kitchen sink microscopy and your day job. So
yeah, it does take a lot more time to put those together, but it's worth it. And I definitely encourage people to check it out. And it's a work in progress, so feedback is really important.
And I really do like the idea of making it kind of a collective effort. So if whether you've got education experience or not, because we sure as hell don't, if you feel like you've got some knowledge to contribute to the world, throw it our way and we'll put it up there, and let's make this a thing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I like it.
Yeah. So I guess that's probably a good spot to wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's about all the time we have for today. We've talked about as much as we could talk about, I think, without getting without going too far into the weeds. But yeah, if anybody has any ideas for anything or comments, feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Definitely keep the conversation going on this one, because for Casey and I both, this is a topic that's pretty important, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that's, I think we covered everything we can cover. We'll come back to this one, I think.
Oh yeah.
But
well, we've got a whole channel for education now.
Yeah, exactly. but for now, I think that's good. So yeah, everybody have a great day.
Thanks for deep sink diving with us.
Oh yeah.
Get your groove on.
Okay, I think I'm Didn't we put that at the end of one of the episodes? Oh man. All right.